Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body Broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we're going to go back and do a Q&A episode for you guys. We've been doing these about once a month, every three to 5 weeks, give or take. So we are going to do that today. We posted a thread earlier this week, I believe, or this weekend sometime. It had you guys submit some questions, so we are going to answer those.
Yeah, pumped for this. I love the Q&As because, as per usual, I know you at least take a brief look at the questions, but I never know what they are, and I'm always so excited because I'm like, let's see if I can actually know these, or let's see if I'm be like, okay, Austin, you can answer that.
Yeah, we never. And when you say brief, it's pretty brief.
Yeah.
I pretty much glance at them. I don't really look into them much, which is kind of makes it fun. So.
Yeah. We know what we do is we should even find, like, just send it to an email or something like that, or you can copy and paste them so that you haven't seen them at all and just kind of go through them fresh off the cusp. But yeah, this is good enough. But you know what? And the reason why I'm saying that, ladies and gentlemen, is because when things are rehearsed, people can go on Google, can look things up a little bit beforehand, and just kind of spit out a paper or what someone else says. Whereas I've always liked it especially if I'm talking to Austin or one of my friends, I know for a fact that they're going off of their own knowledge, which makes it just that much more damn cool, if you ask me.
Yeah, we try to do these kind of off the hip. Same with, and that's kind of how I've always done my own Q&As too. I think it's fun. The answers are a lot better when they're organic like that. So
yeah,
one thing we may have to do with you guys in the future, because we're always discussing ideas, is we have to do like a listener call in or something. I think that would be neat.
Oh yeah, or like
we could do.
Sign it up like you're talking like a live, whereas in we do this and just kind of you put your I can do it too. You know what I mean? Say like we're gonna go live, we'll put it on Instagram or Facebook, and then kind of answer as we go, type of thing.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be a full episode. It would just be maybe would have one or two callers in the middle of an episode or something call in. And because I did this, the reason I mentioned it the other day because I did this the other day. I'm sorry. I did it with one of the Advices Radio Network podcasts. I can't remember which one it was because he has so many. So yeah, Scott McNally, he has a bunch of good podcasts. So I did one of the call-ins there and called in. Yep, they got me live on the phone, and I had a topic of discussion. It was pretty neat. So we might have to do that sometime.
Yeah, that sounds really boss. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what questions we have here. I'm going to go over to Instagram thread that I had and start there. So the first question is, and bear with me, there are some acronyms here.
Sure.
So no, yeah, some acronyms in the thread. So what do you guys think of going high carb, low fat with moderate protein on training days, and then on non-training days doing a low carb, high fat, high protein during a mass phase or growth phase? This is my plan going forward, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this if you think that it is beneficial.
Okay. Let me see if I just typed that here. Let me repeat this to you. So high carb, low fat, moderate protein on training days, and then low carb, high fat, high protein on off days.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Low carb.
Yep. Yeah, low carb, high fat, high protein on off days. Okay. The person said that this is what they're using right now?
Yeah, so this is their plan for their off season or their growth phase that they have set up. So yeah, I'll go ahead and jump into it. So with this, yeah, I would consider that a pretty traditional carb cycling approach. You know, a lot of times people will cycle carbs from training days to off days. That can definitely have some merit. That's nothing extremely new. In terms of actually rotating your protein up and down, well, yeah, on paper, the higher carbs would be protein sparing. So you could in essence lower your protein a little bit or bring it down to a more moderate level on the training days, and then maybe bump it up on the non-training days if you wanted. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I would say though is oftentimes especially somebody that tends to have to eat a lot, I'd normally leave their protein pretty static, because at some point all the macros are going up. just because we need to, to get more calories in. So I may get somebody that I just have to increase all macros. Now we can still strategically separate things throughout the day, like timing our carbs and what have you. But I don't get too worried about rotating protein up and down a lot. Now, I might do that with somebody that has a little bit slower metabolism, but in a moderate to fast metabolism, I probably wouldn't mess with it a whole lot.
Yeah, you know what? My feelings are kind of exactly the same here. It was too funny. I was just trying to find a thread that Joe Jeffrey had put up about this, which was just talking about changing their macro intake between training and rest days. And I can kind of paraphrase my answer from there as well. But going directly from what they said there, with like the high carb, low fat, moderate protein, and and anyone that's asked these questions before, or if you haven't asked these questions before, without us knowing your stats and kind of where that's at, like, so to give hard cut numbers for moderate or high protein, we're not going to be able to do it. But what does that mean to you? Because moderate protein to me could probably, and probably does, mean something a little bit different to Austin. So we'll kind of make that as a disclaimer here too. But I am just like Austin, I'm a pretty damn big fan of leaving, and this is off-season training. Sorry, Austin. Yes.
Yeah, for off season. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So for off season, I'm a pretty damn fan at leaving protein static and letting body fat and body weight gauge if I move that around up or down, or obviously depending upon their results as well, of course. But to change it so dramatically, like let's say this high protein, moderate protein. Let's say high protein was 300 grams per day, and let's say moderate protein was 225 per day. Like that's a pretty big shift, and it depends upon the size of the athlete or whatever though too, right? But the problem with the high protein, high fat, low carb day in my eyes, and just what I've seen from my athletes and my own personal, we'll say, bodybuilding journey, is that with even with having the high protein and the low carbs, so that now the carbs aren't doing a lot of the protein sparing. The high fat can do some of the protein sparing, but it's not that friggin' great at it. So, and plus the problem with that is that the high fat, depending upon if you have lots of oils or depending what your fat intake is, like let's say, obviously a very easy way to get high protein and high fat would be items like steak, fattier cuts of steak, fattier cuts of turkey. And so but it can slow down digestion so damn much. And depending upon, because there was no real mention here about calories being different, just the carb, or was it that there was caloric total mentioned, or was it just macronutrient composition?
No, it wasn't. So you could almost assume that you could really have the same calories in both instances.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Macros, but I'm not really sure.
Okay, sure. You know what? And I'll give an answer on both just quickly. Is that if the off day was lower food potentially, well that might make it even a little bit less protein sparing in a sense, because you do have to have the high protein, so you might have to jack that up even higher and then high fat, again, it depends upon how high a fat is. Low carb, are we talking 60 grams a day or less, 30 grams a day or less, or whatever? But this kind of rotation for off-season growth, I don't really care a lot for, and it's just solely because I've seen people grow significantly better off of, outside of digestion issues, everything else, I've seen people grow significantly better on higher carbs most of the time. Now, of course, that's not a blanket statement. That is just what I've seen. And also, I'll go into more of the mind side on this for the coaching aspect, is how well do you deal with this, in a sense of, on your off days here, are you hungry? Is your digestion going good? Do you have the same bowel movements? How is your training going? Are you getting bigger? Are you getting stronger? Are you getting fatter? So like, all objectively, you can kind of look at these things here. But the high carb, low fat, moderate protein on training days, like as Austin said, the higher carbs there will really be able to help mitigate a lot of the protein in terms of being protein sparing. So that's kind of my preferential way to kind of do the off seasons anyway. But And as much as we say this, it's one of those things is try it out for yourself. As long as in the off season you're not doing too dramatically of a rotation in terms of if the high day, which is let's say you're training 4 or 5 times per week and your high day is 3,500 calories. Let's just say that. I'm not going to give any macronutrient breakdown, but then your off days are of 2,500 calories or 3,000 calories, that might not be that optimal. But if you have 3,500 calories on both days and you're just rotating the protein down a bit and you're rotating obviously the carbs down quite a bit and you're jacking your fat up quite a bit and you're recovering good and you're feeling good and maybe you aren't the best carbohydrate digester, then sure, do it. Because it also could be potentially a way to get your insulin sensitivity in check a little bit if that's ever been a thing for you. There obviously are supplemental ways to do that, but kind of to wrap up my huge ramble there is that it's not ideal in my coaching style, but I have seen it work.
Yep. I don't have a whole lot to add. I think there's just much beyond that's kind of just contextual. So
you got it.
We will go to the next one. Okay. I always wondered about adductor and abductor exercises. I do them because you say so. This is one of my clients.
Yep.
And obviously, you must know they are good. Today, I read on IG someone had talked about using them to build the sweep, which would be adductors. Which would be abductors. What are the key benefits of these two bikini exercises? Haha.
Awesome. I'm going to write that. What is the benefit? I love this. Of these two bikini exercises. Yep.
The biggest thing is you can look at a physique from the front and from the side, or really from any angle. Like if you look at a leg from any angle, especially front and back, one of the most disheartening things to me, besides a leg just being small, is a big gap between the thighs.
Oh yeah.
You know, that really ruins the shape of a leg for me. I'm not saying you have to have the crazy huge meaty adductors, or which it helps. It certainly is not going to hurt, but it just having like even a decent sweep and then having a flat adductor on the inside is just, it kind of really ruins the shape of a leg to me. And then what a lot of people don't realize too is from the side, a lot of that hamstring drop you're getting is pulling your adductor into it. When you kind of like scoop the leg, when you're doing your side pose and you scoop that adductor on the inside, that's a big part of what's pushing down that hamstring to make it hang there. It's partially the hamstring itself, but it's also the inner part of the thigh that you're kind of catching with your back leg and pushing outward. So that would be, that would obviously be two benefits, just having a more aesthetically pleasing leg from the front and the back, and then having more meat to push on in that side pose to get your hamstring to drop a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Perfect. I've definitely got a little bit of things to add here because I've had the literal exact same question from my, not only my male clients, but some females too, even women's physique. Of course, bikini girls won't necessarily complain at all about that, or nor will usually your 35 to 50-year-old lady Gen Pop clients, because they'll or usually it's the how come these exercises are not in my program, right? Yeah. Thank you, Suzanne Summers, and your Thigh Master that my mom got 2 years after it came out for $2 at a garage sale. Thank you, Suzanne Summers, for thinking that all you need to do is sit and watch TV and use a predetermined wussy easy resistance on your inner thighs, and pow, you will now look like not only Suzanne Summers but every other Miss Bikini Olympia. Doesn't work like that way, ladies. Sorry if I just broke a whole bunch of hearts. You can send the hate mail to AOL. Actually, what's your email? Sorry, Austin? DAT? Never mind. Just kidding. Anyway, so how this works, ladies and gents, is that there, and I'll go a little bit off on this too, is that there are ancillary structures, is kind of what I call them. You could call them supportive structures or whatever. And in the upper body, those are muscles like the serratus anterior, obviously rotator cuffs to a degree, but then there is your your abductor muscles and your adductor muscles. Really easy way to remember which one is which, ladies and gentlemen, is that adductor is adductor, which means you're adding your legs together. So that's really easy to remember. And then the abductor is the one where you are resistance and you're pushing your knees apart. So having that there, like I remember reading 2004, 5, something like that, about, of course, it was something really tough titled like having big ass legs and something like that. And it was written by Dante Trudell of Dog Crap Training. And he showed some pictures of some guys with some whoppingly big adductors. And so the adductor muscles are your gracilis, your adductor magnus. And he said, listen, you can now stand with your feet a little bit more wider apart, so your thighs are still touching, and you're going to have this huge extra big ball of mass added onto your legs. It gives a nice, especially when the adductor muscles start to be overtrained. They start like, when I say overtrained, I mean like shaped up. They're not just undertrained or not trained at all. They start to have a really nice kind of concavical shape to them, right? Or like they start to not concave, but sorry, they start to get like a bowing, almost like a sphere coming out from the side of the leg, almost like on how the lat or the vastus lateralis will have like the sweep will have to it. You almost have a sweep on the inner side of your thigh, and it just looks not only more aesthetically pleasing, but then your legs obviously very clearly look a lot bigger, and then you can stand a little bit further apart and be able to have that massive 3D look to your legs. And so when you don't train these stabilization structures, like such as if anyone has ever heard of winging scapula or has ever had like their shoulders round on them during a bench press or things like that, that's usually your your serratus anterior is one of the main problems. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because if they're neglected, it'll end up not only A, they won't be muscular enough for you to see them, but B, they will cause a lot of problems down the road. Especially if we get into the groove of doing leg press, hack squat, Smith squat, and you're not really using the supportive structures. So because you have to think in a squat, what keeps your knees from going like shooting out and you collapsing, and what keeps your knees from shooting in and collapsing during a barbell squat are these muscles. They are, I don't really care much for the term stabilizer muscles, but we'll call them support or ancillary muscles. But yeah, those are the things that can make you fail. So if you know for a fact that, like, let's say, and I've done this tons of times when I was a personal trainer, and I see girls and guys squat down, and then they'll get to the bottom and they'll shoot back up, and their knees will cave in like crazy. And then now, A, that's making the knee track go way out of whack, and B, that's putting so much stress on the IT band and the TFL, the iliotibial band, and then the tensor fascia latae on the outside, which is just a nightmare if you keep that going. But then again, you're not getting any of that gracilis, pectineus, adductor magnus growing, the big muscles on the inside of your thigh. So then the chances of you being hurt are raised there. So there's a very, especially if you're a guy going, I don't want to get on one of the good girl, bad girl machines. What are you talking about? Well, here's a reason why, because it could potentially hurt you. It's just like if you don't train lower back or train your abs, you could potentially start rounding your back on a deadlift or a squat. So you can kind of think of it that way. Then to add on to that is when I did read that article from Dante, I started doing exactly what he said. I forget the rep scheme. It doesn't matter, but I started putting a lot of focus onto the adductor machine. And I think I did this for 3 to 6 months. I went to my massage therapist for the first time in that time. He goes, what is going on with your adductors? They were so full of scar tissue, whatever. And so he massaged it all out, did some myofascial trigger point and release therapy. And he's like, well, he goes, they're humongous. And I was like, it was almost like you just like having a girl be told she was pretty. I was like, oh geez, stop. Oh geez, because I was so happy that they had grown so much. But they did. Like, and not only that, not only do I not regret that, but now I not only have that stability in there, but they did. I was able to probably shift my stance about another inch or two apart with my feet, so and be able to turn my knees out and show the adductor there. But then for the abductor is, and I'll kind of bastardize it and paraphrase Kai Green here, is when you start doing the one where you push your knees out, which is going to be predominantly a glute exercise as well, and some of your thigh as well. But you will start being able to have much more control in back poses. I think you mentioned something along those lines too. But like things like your rear double bicep or your rear lat spread, is that you won't feel as awkward when you have to turn your knees out, and you're trying to hold that pose there, because now you have the control. And some people, I know quite a few people, have no idea. If you say flex your glutes or contract your glutes, they have no idea how to do it. In that machine, especially if you go slow enough, you go low enough, and you push out and you hold that contraction for a second, go nice and control back down, come out, hold that for a second, you will start feeling your friggin' glutes. And I'm going to put up a video about this on Instagram here a little bit later. My friend Jesse made a very good video on this, but it's basically, if you don't feel the exercise doing it, just shift your seat around, or kind of move your body, your torso. So I can show you what I mean on my Instagram there. But yeah, that's one of the other great things, that now you can know how to set your legs, you can know how to squeeze the glutes. And what do you hear at every damn bodybuilding show? Legs, glutes, squeeze, because people don't know how to keep the contraction going. So size, stabilization, and then not only that, but then piss off some bikini girls being a big bodybuilder in the good girl, bad girl machine. Why not? It's hilarious. Starts a conversation.
Yep, there you go. And it's, I think, one more good thing to add is you don't necessarily have to use those machines. You can not necessarily isolate them quite as well, but you can do things like varying stance leg presses and goblet squats and things like that, where you can still hit them if you don't have those machines, because I know some people don't have them. There's still, you can hook bands to your knees, do hip banded exercises. There's all kinds of different stuff you can do to work those muscles if you don't have those machines. So don't
the one that I use myself and with my clients is actually from Slingshot. It's called, oh my gosh, what the heck is it called off the top of my head? Here, I literally have it behind me here. 1 second. It's called the hip circle, and they have, I think, exactly. They have 3 different, I think, settings. There's like the hip circle 2, and then the hip circle grippy, and that's one for the abductions, so the one that pushes out your legs. And I will incorporate that not only to everyone's plan, just because then it's a banded kind of restriction. So you don't necessarily need the machine to be able to have to do that, for sure.
Cool beans. All right. Yeah, I've heard of that. I've actually heard of that. I didn't know. For some reason, I wasn't connecting it to it's Mark Bell's company, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's made for powerlifters to get their abductor stronger. So if this is a bodybuilder asking this question, there you go. Like, it doesn't get more awesome than someone looking to improve their power lift. So if they're doing them, I think we should be doing them too.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Next one. What is your idea of keeping a steady blood sugar during the day, having carbohydrates with each meal besides the last meal? I think this might just be, it's a hard time with English a little bit on this. We do get, as we discovered today, we have we have listeners in 30 countries. So
listeners in 30 countries. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes the typing might be, a little hard to translate it into good English on the typing, which is okay. That's not a problem. So they're asking, I'm assuming what they're asking is, would it be a good idea to eat carbohydrates in every meal to maintain a steady blood sugar? I think that's what they're asking. Which, yes and no. It's certainly not necessary. Most non-diabetic people have so many regulatory processes within their body that even if we go, forever without eating carbohydrates, our blood sugar is not going to plummet. Otherwise, that's why things like ketogenic diets and fasting and all those things work without us keeling over. We don't have to have sugar. We don't, because we have hepatic, glucose output from our liver, which would keep us in homeostasis. So no, you don't have to eat those. You don't have to eat carbohydrates throughout the day like that. Now, I will, full disclosure, I'll say I am a fan most of the time of nutrient timing, just because it does offer some benefits. But I do have some clients that I will sprinkle in little bits of glucose, or even, heaven forbid, fructose.
How dare Austin Stout? Yeah.
I know. I hope nobody's throwing anything at their computer screen right now, but
right.
I will introduce those little bits of sugar or, carbohydrate sources at points during the day. And they just generally feel better. I think it's, it likely just boils down to that's what their brain metabolizes best and feels best on. And they just feel more cognitively, cognitively better on those things. Now, there's people that feel cognitively good on fats and burning ketones as well. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of one of those things I would try it. I would say macros, as long as you're matching the macros and calories, I would try both ways and see what feels better. Because again, the nutrient timing is great. All those things are great. Food selection is obviously important, in terms of digestion, but performance is also important. So if you're more productive during the day and you're more, you're moving around more, your NEAT levels are higher, you feel better, your quality of life is obviously going to be better, and you're probably going to get more done. Your training sessions are going to be better. So I'm not going to say, I'm not going to strictly nutrient time someone to only have carbohydrates at 1 or 2 times during the day just for the sake of doing the timing when they might feel way better having them in every meal. I'd probably put them in every meal. So I'm not completely closed-minded to that either. So I would say just see how, see what feels better. But to answer the question of blood sugar or blood glucose, no, you're not like I said, most non-diabetic people are not going to need, even a diabetic's not going to need carbohydrates. We have mechanisms to handle that.
Yeah. I really, you nailed it there. I really have so little to add outside of you don't necessarily need or want your blood glucose to be stable during the day due to like training sessions type of thing. Like, you might want a spike in your insulin levels around then. But I've seen or heard of this, like no carbs at the last meal, but I think that is a little bit, I'm not necessarily saying that the question asker is along the same mentality, but I've seen people put this out there, no carbs in the last meal of the day, to lower fasting blood glucose in the morning. But there are items out there, like I remember viewing the study that protein powder will jack your insulin more than white bread will. So yeah. If that's the theory behind having the no carbs at the end of the day, that's kind of out the window. But then if that is your prime directive, is to keep your steady blood sugar, having carbs all day outside of the last meal, it's like, well, what are your fats and your proteins? Because if you have if anyone's referring to at all the glycemic index, which has been kind of, shot and put into a casket and cast out to sea and wait for the Kraken to come eat it type of thing. But if people are still, yeah, exactly, right. If people are still using that method, it's as soon as you put, and really quickly, if anyone has heard of this, the GI or the glycemic index, what it was they took a whole bunch of different carbohydrates and collected 50 grams of the carbohydrates coming from that source and measured how quickly that they rose insulin. That is it. That is all it is. It is nothing other than that. And so I think white bread was number 1 or something like that. It doesn't matter what it is, but no one eats 50 grams of a carbohydrate all day in isolation at various points. So that's why that is so flawed and is just not, it should not be part of your consideration for anything else. Like I can turn Skittles into the glycemic index of probably white or sweet potato if I throw in protein and fat with it, because that will blunt the release of the amount of insulin from it. So that's the thing to take into consideration. How much fat are you having with those meals? How much protein you're having with those meals? And then if you're really super, super concerned with keeping your blood sugar the same during the day, is do random point glucometer tests. Do it right before you eat. Do it right when you eat. Do it 30 minutes. Do it an hour after, and then go from there. But because especially if that is such a big concern for you, that would be the only true way to know if that's going to be working for you or not. But yeah, to answer the question again, should it be carbs all day and then the last meal be refrain from having carbs? No, it doesn't have to be that way at all.
Yep, I agree. Okay. Ooh, we got a bit of a whopper here.
Ooh, baby.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, so I think it would be, this isn't even, I don't know if this is necessarily a question, it's kind of a statement, but I think it would be useful to explain how metabolism starts to shift during overreaching or overtraining to lend some awareness for those that are prone to overreaching too much or beyond functional value. So, okay, I'll stop real quick. So how does metabolism, I'm going to reword the question to make it worded a little bit easier, is how would metabolism shift during extreme systemic stress periods? That would be, yeah, because in reality, overtraining or overreaching is just a stressor, and it's not going to, our body isn't going to treat that a whole lot differently than any other chronic stressor. It's going to be pretty similar. So, okay. So, all right. So the easiest way to think about this question is that there's a couple things that happens is, if you look at what the body actually does during chronic stress, and you could translate this right over into overreaching or overtraining, is initially there could actually be some increase in metabolic rate, as what you're getting is it's the body's compensating for a stress response. There are, if you want to look at like adrenal hormones, for example, there are things like adrenaline being pumped out, cortisol, but with that also is you are probably going to start increasing output of glucose. Glucose will typically pumped out in response to stress. That's why I'll give you an interesting example is take a stimulant, caffeine. That's a good example. Caffeine, if I remember correctly, there was actually a study, I want to say, that showed that caffeine increased insulin sensitivity at some point. It was, I don't remember what the dose was or duration or any of that, but typically like initial caffeine response, if anything, is probably going to raise your blood glucose level. Why? Because it's pumping out cortisol and adrenaline. And it's stimulating your nervous system. So that anytime that fight or flight response or your sympathetic nervous system is overly stimulated, which would be during overtraining or overreaching, you're absolutely going to have an adrenal response there. So yeah, your metabolism may go up some, but that's only going to last so long. That's going to be a pretty acute response, and then you're going to tend to go in the opposite direction. So you might actually start becoming more efficient at utilizing calories. I can give you an example of that too. Would be contest prep. That's metabolic adaptions to the T. We just become more efficient. Now, metabolic adaptions occur because you're eating less and you're losing body fat and stuff, but they also occur too because your body's stressed. That's part of it. If you're stressed and your body's freaking out, it's going to start hoarding, it may start hoarding calories, or it may start slowing, certain metabolic processes to compensate. And that can also do other things, like it can skew hunger signaling. So you get some people will have, I've seen it go both ways. You would think on paper that you would probably have less hunger if you were really stressed because you're sympathetically driven. But there are some people that do get like stress hunger, I guess you could call it, or they overeat during stress periods. Now, so it can definitely go both ways. I think it probably depends on like how bad the process is. And then you're also dealing, at that point, you're also dealing with the whole emotional side of things as well, which is another, that's of course another component. But yeah, you initially, so just to sum that up, and I should say too, overreaching versus overtraining, I guess the person that asked the question asked me some really good questions on my Q&A, so thanks for this one. But the overreaching is going to be basically the step before overtraining. That just means you're starting to tread into dangerous water. That's essentially what you're getting. You're overreaching. And he says overreaching beyond functional value. So meaning, and I know you know exactly what this is because I know you followed Scott Abel for a long time. And isn't he the one who talks about, I could be way off, but talks about like the slingshot method, like overreaching on purpose? And then, yeah. So you might want to talk about that while we're, on the subject. But yeah, you'll have that initial response of probably increased metabolic rate, increased utilization of calories. But that's probably going to turn around and go the other direction pretty quickly once your body realizes what's going on. And if you stay chronically stressed like that for a longer period, the worse it's going to get worse.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly. I did a post, I want to say a week or two ago at the time we're recording this, on just called paying attention to your body, or like listen to your body, and how vague that concept is and what just the hell that frigging means. So in that where I'm going with that is overtraining versus overreaching are two very different things. Like overtrained is what the heck is that? It's called rhabdo or rab something. You know what I'm talking about there, Austin?
Or
rhabdomyolysis, and we call it rhabdo for short. But so I just googled that here. So so rhabdo is a serious syndrome due to direct or indirect muscle injury. It results from the death of muscle fibers and release of their contents into the bloodstream. This can lead to serious complications. Blah blah blah. So. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because rhabdo was a thing that the CrossFitters, and believe me, I know it's not all CrossFitters, but it was in the CrossFit community that was what they were going after. It's like the whole no pain, no gain thing. Like I have done, I don't know if you've ever done this, Austin, but I one time, and funny enough, you mentioned Scott Abel, I hadn't trained legs in probably about a good 3 months thanks to my back and my hip injury. And I was finally feeling pretty good, and when I went to go visit Scott Abel, he's about a 6-hour drive from me, and he's one of my bodybuilding legends. I will never thank him enough for all he's done for me. And so when we were training legs, he's like, let's train some legs. I was like, okay. And so motivation was through the roof. I was pumped up. I was happy to be there, but like I lowered my weight significantly, and it was like pumping along. It's like, holy crap, I don't think I've got a lot left. But he's probably, geez, if he were to ever be a personal trainer or a motivator, it would be insane, because holy crap, he made me shove probably about 175% of what I usually did in terms of intensity. And I believe that I had rhabdo after this. And so what did that mean? Was for about 2 weeks, and I'm not talking even remotely close to the memes that you see on social media about, oh, leg day, have to use the wheelchair to get to the toilet. Like, I could not go from a bent leg to a stiff leg. My legs were completely stiff. It's like I was walking like a penguin. My girlfriend was like, what is going on with you? What is wrong with you? It wasn't funny. It wasn't hard to sit down. It was impossible to sit down. Like, my legs were straight, and this lasted at least 5 days. And then I would slowly be able to start to move them down. And I'm talking insurmountable, and I'm no wuss. And this was an insurmountable amount of pain. And there was definitely exactly what this said here, indirect and indirect muscle damage and probably death of some muscle fibers. So that reason why I'm mentioning that story is because that is when, if you are overtraining and then you start doing silly things like this, like the whole, and again, not to super come down on the CrossFit people, but some of these workouts of the day, it's like the AMRAP, the as many reps as possible, some of them, and if you're in a competition, I know you want to do this, you want to push it to your, and if you're already overtrained, this can happen. So for me, it was just because my body was not ready to that level, but my brain was, and so therefore I tried to do something, and that was very stupid on my behalf. I regret it entirely, but it's knowing that. And then overreaching is when you are coming to the part where you know that now you're probably going to be a little bit more mentally foggy. Maybe your numbers you're getting in the gym, or your sets or your intensity are just a little bit down. And this is why I mentioned that post on listen to your body, because you should. This is what this means, ladies and gentlemen. It's called biofeedback, is listen to your body. Just hopefully I could get out an explanation there of what overtraining versus overreaching is, because you and I know, Austin, that everyone uses overtraining when they should probably be using overreaching. But you'll see that everywhere, right? But so how the metabolism will start to affect, I can completely agree with what you just said, is you might be able to use a little bit more because your body's in such a state of shock or almost even paranoia that it's trying to rebuild and repair things as much as it can, but then it could slow down to the point where now you are more prone to injury. You're in just exactly like you said, metabolic adaptation during an extreme fat loss phase, such as contest prep. It will do this, but then the slingshot effect, which is what I don't know if Scott called it exactly that, but it's been bastardized and everything. But it's the super compensation, which he goes along with something is called this cycle diet. But basically, it's like, and I will even tell people to do this to a varying degree too before a vacation or things or times off of the gym, is that you can overtrain and you can I will take that back. You can overreach to the point of almost overtraining if you know there's going to be a break coming up. and I do this for so many people. Like, let's say, for instance, I had a girl that is going to go home for Christmas, and it is December 11th. It is 2 weeks away, and her program is 4, maybe 5 times a week. I might tell her to train 5, 6, 7 times a week for those next 2 weeks so that we can enjoy like a week or so off at Christmas, not only to be able to super compensate the metabolism so that it's so ready to absorb more food and to recompose, but then also the body will need a break from the training so that it's not going to dip into too far into that overtraining. And 2 weeks is something, and I don't think I would go much past 2 weeks, especially 7 days a week, especially if you know how to train hard. I know this is going a little bit off topic, but if you know how to train really hard, like you know how to train how Austin and I train, and you go in and you bust it, you bust some balls, you bust some boobs, whatever the heck girls want to call it there, bust some hump, and you train 7 days a week and this is your program that is usually 5 days a week, and you just keep repeating the program, you are going to be beat the hell up. And here's a way to find out. If you aren't beat the hell up after doing that, I bet you're not training that hard. Yeah, I'm calling all you out right now. So that's the slingshot effect. That's what you can. So that when you go in there, you can go recover after that. Take a couple days off the gym, and then when you come back, you'll be so ready to, even if it's not the same program, but the next program, you'll be super compensated to have everything kind of storing in the body, because it's kind of goes, okay, screw this. I'm not going to have that happen next time. I'm going to be ready for this, so that your power and output volume is much greater and much higher.
Yep. Beautifully said. That was.
Oh, thanks, man.
We went further, went a little further off on that one, but that was a good question. So there was a lot going on.
I like that a lot. Great question.
That was straight from Marty's mouth.
Straight from Marty's mouth, part 7. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm going over to Facebook. We have a couple more left on here, and we will round this out for you guys. Okay. All right. So actually, we have 2 more left that we haven't gotten. So first one is, what do you guys think is more subjective, modeling or contest prep? Oh, I'm not sure.
Ooh, okay. Yep.
Okay. Well, now I guess there are obviously some people that in the industry that model.
Yep.
Some for money. Absolutely. I have a couple of clients that do pretty successfully. It's not just, and it's not just as males or females. I mean, it's definitely both. I've had both. More subjective though. That's hard for me to answer, because there's an audience for everything. Not to make it weird or anything, but I mean, there's an audience for any modeling type or genre. I mean, there's going to be an audience for. It's just, I guess, finding that audience and knowing how to market to that audience is going to be the biggest thing. If you're looking to make money with contest prep, I mean, you have a set of judges, and they pretty much all judge on the same criteria. Yeah, there is some subjective. It's not going to be 100% without bias, but it's going to be at least there is some type of criteria. Whereas in modeling, you have, I don't know. I mean, I guess you just have to hope that people like the way you look,
Mm-hmm.
So that's hard. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot. I'm not really sure how to answer that much better than just know your audience, and you could say that. I could say that too about competing is, people forcing themselves into classes they shouldn't be in. Well. Yep. Yeah, the judges are subjective, I guess, to a point. But if you don't fit the criteria, then you're not going to do well. Just because you're a female and you want to pose doesn't mean you should do women's physique. Don't get upset that the judges are being biased when you don't look like you belong in women's physique. Right. So you have to take that into consideration. On the same token, if you're if nobody likes the way you look, then you're probably not going to be that successful at modeling either. I know that's maybe harsh, but that's just reality.
Was this question from a female?
No, it wasn't. It was actually a male.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, even better. Just curious. Yeah, because I always am seeing an uprise in male modeling and male modeling style competitions. So I was just very curious. So I've actually quite a bit I can say on this one, which is great. Yeah, which is great because I get to hear myself talk. Yes, got my headphones jacked up. So I have had quite a few clients that I was talking back and forth with. My latest one was Colette. Hi, Colette. Your photo shoot went awesome. Because she wanted to do a show here coming up in the new year, in this whatever the time we put this podcast out, but it wants to do one in 2019 in February, and of course they moved them to March. But due to her schedule, because she is a farmer and has to do certain things at certain times, there's just no way that it would be applicable for her to do a show then. So we picked a photo shoot that she just did, I want to say 3 weeks ago now, and it kicked ass. So that style, such as just a photo shoot, I know this isn't modeling, I'll get into that, but that was just a much more applicable goal, as opposed to, she still got pumped up, she still got wicked photos. If anything, she got more attention than you ever would on stage, because you get a photo shoot with just you, and you get things to take home. But where I started going with that is, then all of a sudden you started seeing, especially in the States, there is, what is it? I wanted to say Playboy, and I didn't mean to say Playboy, so I just won't say Playboy on this podcast. Playboy. It was Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, and they had like a 5,000 girl modeling contest down in the U.S. So what is the difference between these? I know this isn't the question yet, and I will get there. Don't get me wrong, I got it in front of me here. But what is the difference is almost everything. You flip open Sports Illustrated, it is not going to be necessarily just bikini girls. Are the girls in bikinis? Sure, but not bikini girls. Will some be figure looking? Potentially. Will there be female women's physique? My God, Marty. Will there be female bodybuilders and women's physique competitors in there? I doubt it highly. But that's also, like Austin said, that's not what they're looking for. So for modeling competitions, you have to kind of fit the groove, just like Austin said about not getting into the wrong class. Like if you should be in bodybuilding and you're trying to do men's physique, maybe look into that, blah, 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 things like that. Same thing with girls. However, the question is, what is more subjective? I would be just as willing to say, if we were to get rid of what are the guidelines of what do you need to do, I would be willing to say they're almost exactly the same amount of subjectivity. From what I have seen on these things, because I have seen women with, and I'm going to use women just as an example, I've seen women with gorgeous skin tone, gorgeous body composition, symmetry, proportion, and them not placed that well due to maybe the judges did not find their cosmetic beauty. I'll just flat out say it. Maybe they didn't think that your face and your hair were the best. Maybe your makeup was off. So there's that. But also, you know what? I have seen that in bikini as well. I have seen it to the point where a judge will, the same thing. You have a top five, if not first place, bikini body, we'll call it. Everything's just flowing. But maybe your hair or your makeup or your suit or something else is off. And so that subjectivity is gone. However, on the other hand, I have definitely seen as well where it's almost like the girls are being judged from the neck down. Now, you go to various federations' websites and they will say their spiel, which usually, and I'll flat out say this, usually it's a big bunch of crap because they'll word it so darn generally. It's like you must have an equal amount of muscle to visit. It's like, what do you mean? So anyways, to not go too far off of that tangent just because it makes me so damn mad, but where I was saying is that I have seen judges not even judge the face, and that's at not only bikini but figure in women's bodybuilding, because there was a lot of rumors talking about how female bodybuilding is from the neck down. Don't know if it's true, don't care, but maybe that's how judges did do it. They never officially put that out, of course, but bikini, they say, for some of the leagues, for not the modeling, for the bikini competitions here, for bikini bodybuilding shows, they will say it's 40% or 50% based upon your beauty and your look. They won't necessarily say how does your face look, but they're talking about your hair, they're talking about presentation, they're talking about posing. And then for the modeling stuff, like there was one newer league up here, I think called like FMS or something, or like something fitness model search or something, whatever. It's actually one that I'm going to be an MC of here. One of my good buddies, David Ford with Elite Magazine, is having one here in March, which is super cool. They did the first one last year. I'll be MCing this one here, and it's two different kind of rounds. It'll be just like a bikini bodybuilding show, so you go bikini, but then they'll do a fitness theme wear round where they have to talk about their personality and things like that too. So I don't necessarily know if that's what they're talking about when they say modeling being subjective, but it could be there too. So this is going to be different from a bodybuilding or a bikini show because you have to show personality and whatever, but that's going to be even more subjective. And when it's subjective, it's almost like it should be subjudgtive because it all depends on who the judges are. I might get shot if some judges higher up wherever hear me on this, but if you have a judging panel, and you know what, I will say this, this I will be allowed to say now. So in Canada for years, but before the CBBF and the the CPA were before the CPA was around, it was just the CBBF. It was always the head judges of every province made up the Canadian Bodybuilding Federation national panel, and they have always loved their athletes lean, dry, hard, and fairly big for women. It was almost a joke, but it wasn't a joke. It was just that's how we wanted it. And what kind of went around, and I heard this when I was very young, that it was they want their bikini girls to look like mini figure girls, they want their figure girls to look like mini women's physique girls, and then they want their women's physique girls to look like mini female bodybuilders. And that's what it was. And there were girls that would win their pro card in Canada, and let's say figure, and then go down to the States and be able to clean up in women's physique. Or there would be bikini girls that would win their pro card here and be able to go down and clean up and figure because that was the subjectivity here. I know this isn't fully answering the question on the subjectivity between modeling or there, but I am saying who is holding the modeling contest or whatever they're referring to here. Is it Sports Illustrated? Is it like my buddy David Ford Photography here having a bikini bodybuilding show look? Is he in his company going to be the one that's judging it? Because that's everything. So the tips on this is do your research. I know no one asked for tips, but do your research on who would have been last year's winners or whatever. See if it is more based upon their look. See if it's more based upon their presentation. Is it their smile? Do they like brunettes? Do they like blondes or whatever? But that's a pretty damn difficult question. I think that both Austin and I answered pretty darn good here. But one more time to reiterate, what is more subjective? I don't think you can say one way or the other, but maybe I'm just not as educated as I would say.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think the one thing is people can't get upset about something that just because you think something looks good doesn't mean you're going to do good.
Oh yeah.
And that could be, that's like in modeling, like you said, at least in modeling, there's so many different, and if we're talking about modeling for a physique contest like that WBFF or something like that.
Yep.
There's criteria, but if you're talking about modeling, taking photos to present to an agent or something. Well, just know who your audience is. You can probably
what agency? What agency? You know what I mean? Like if you're sending it to Calvin Klein or are you sending it to Playboy? Like I know it sounds hilarious, but that's going to be subjectivity for sure.
Right. You can't get upset. You can't send a female that weighs 100 pounds to a plus size agency or vice versa.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So okay. So almost done here. Okay, so here's one on any side effects if you consume high sugar foods but still within your macros every day. For example, would there be more weight gain, insulin resistance, etc.? Okay. So the whole debate of sugar or IIYFM fitting your macros. So short answers. Well, my question would be, what is high sugar for one?
Exactly.
There's going to be a point where you're going to have some deleterious type side effects. I mean, what's likely going to happen is you're going to have GI side effects before anything else. If you're just eating like candy all day, you're just generally probably not going to feel very good. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those situations where, again, food selection comes down to digestion and performance. Yep. I think those should be, in my eyes, those are probably two of the most important variables in food selection. You should have good digestion and you should be able to perform. That should be pretty much cover it. If you're doing those things, you're likely getting all your micronutrients anyhow.
That's right. Or
you wouldn't feel good in the first place.
Yeah.
So, you could, there's studies and stuff on fructose, for example, and he didn't cite fructose specifically, but that was one of the things we were talking about last week. I don't know if you saw that thread on Facebook, but
sure did. Yep.
Yeah. It was cited something like 75 grams, or more. It might even have been more per day was safe. And there was some possible, toxicity beyond that point. Now, the problem with this too is that anytime we look at these studies, like, we have to remember that we ourselves are in a calorically controlled environment. So that changes everything. You're talking about people that are in, exact same environment all the time. So yeah, if we took somebody a normal person that ate, I don't know, they ate 2,000 calories of just whatever food, just whatever they're eating on average, and then you added 100 grams of sugar to their day, or 150 grams of sugar to their day on top of that, they're going to notice weight gain, of course.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to notice weight gain. They're probably not going to feel very good. Their blood sugars will be all over the place. They're going to become insulin resistant because now they have created a caloric surplus. They have consuming a ton of sugar. Their blood sugar is probably all over the place. And their digestion is probably not that good. So yeah, but in our case of, I guess you could give the example of, well, if we replaced 100 grams of carbs from rice with 100 grams of carbs from Twizzlers, well, what's going to happen? I hate to be, probably not a lot. I mean, depending on, the only thing I would say is I like to look at sugar and fruit and things of that nature in the context of total, like, percentage based on what they're eating in a day. So, for example, if somebody's only eating 100 grams of carbs in a day, I don't want them to get 100 grams of sugar. If someone's eating, like, for example, if someone's eating 600 grams of carbs in a day, I don't give a shit if they get 100 grams of sugar. It's probably not going to matter. It's going to make no difference. I mean, I know for me right now, eating like 600 grams, I'm sure I get 100 grams of sugar because I'm eating some fruit. I'm eating some sugars around training. I mean, shit, I'm probably getting more than that. But it's not, but that's relevant to eating a huge amount of carbohydrates.
Yep.
So yeah, again, controlled, like in a controlled environment, I'd probably say no. It's not going to be an issue in most cases.
I literally have so little to add to that because not only is that perfect what you just said, but we have the whole IFYM podcast called Me, Him, and IFFYM. You can go take a look at that one too if you want some more information on this for the question asker. But can you use sugar in the diet and will it affect your body composition? You know what? I'm going to go a little bit woo on some people here and go completely against the grain on science here. And I remember having a really good chat with not only Scott Abel, but Justin Harris. And we talked about, of course, the flat out the calories, of course, 4 carbs, whatever. It looked at sugar, like let's say 400 grams of carbs coming from Skittles versus 400 grams of carbs coming from sweet potato, and then of course matching the fats, matching the fiber. And we still, and I'll go with these two especially, do believe, because I think Scott Abel even calls them cosmetic carbs, and like as in you will look a little bit worse on the we'll call it the full sugar carb. So if it fits your macros is such a weird flow. We need to even do like a part 2 on that, Austin, just because there's still people that are so confused, right? But so am I saying will you look worse if you have some sugar in your diet? No, not necessarily, but I would still love to see someone that it has to be the same person. It can't be these like a genetic freak on drugs or one girl on drugs, one girl on not, or whatever, or even different girls. It has to be the same person. doing like kind of the same training, same whatever, if you were to have them on the same diet, and then let's say if they have 100 grams of carbs a day, of course don't do this, it's a little bit too low of grams of carbs. Anyway, I'm just using it for my analogy here. And then say 25 grams of carbs are coming from pure sugar or glucose or whatever, and then 75 from whole grains or like whatever you want to call it. Then do 50-50, then do 75-25, and then do 100% to the sugar, whatever. I still think there would be a cosmetic difference. And why is that? Literally what Austin said, digestion purposes. There are things out there called SIBO, like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and I've seen it. If you ever, and I see this on stage all the time, and it's so sadly, and what I mean when I see it on stage is that being the MC of some bodybuilding shows, I see all the girls and the guys in a lineup. So like if I turn to my left, everyone's kind of in a straight line there, and I can see girls, and I'm talking little tiny bikini girls with their stomachs puffing out. And it's not necessarily that they loaded incorrect word, but they could have something called SIBO, which it basically turns you into a miniature version of Homer Simpson. And it means that they have their stomachs are not tight. It means that their digestion sucks. And it means that they have like a little bit, it's like if you wake up in the morning, you have a little bit of bloat. So yes, it will affect your composition. I've seen it time and time. Like I've even seen it on my frigging self, for God's sake. If I, like, for instance, right now is Christmas time, as we record this, but I've seen it time and time again myself, where I'll eat off for a bit or whatever, and then I'm lucky too, but I'll tell you, within 3, 4, maybe 5 days of eating, we'll say really good, we'll say bro food straight up that my body likes, and I know I have fat on me, but my stomach is flat. And that would you say that improves my composition? Damn right it does. And so then I'm not going to be holding as less water in certain areas. I'm not going to be having as inflamed joints or whatever. So I don't think that angle of that question has been given yet, like in terms of that, because the digestion can and will and does affect the direct composition in terms of cosmetic look. Because I think so, man. I think there's something is there. Everyone can say you can get shredded on Pop-Tarts. I am one of those guys that say you can get shredded on Pop-Tarts. I am Mr. Pop-Tart. However, if we were to forego the Pop-Tarts for forever, and just like you said, Austin, I love you. You nailed it perfectly with the whole, there's a difference between having 100 grams of carbs total a day versus 500 total a day, and you sneaking in 100 carbs versus you sneaking in 100 carbs. You said everything perfectly. I'm not trying to add to that. All I'm saying is there's something to be said to people that can and will eat perfectly for their body. And what I mean that is the food that digests great for them, the food that gives them all the micronutrients for them. If they can get it all in, do it. But like, so yeah, I'll give a little bit of an ass backwards answer and say yes with an asterisk.
Yeah, I agree. I would pretty much say that 95% of the time, if somebody's going into a show, I'm going to pull out anything that I consider to be inflammatory.
Absolutely.
Just as a precautionary. I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never loaded anyone with any processed food. Like I've used things like Rice Krispie treats and stuff, but those, those generally aren't terrible. That's rice and a little bit of sugar, but you know, I'm talking like full on junk loading, where if I'm going to load someone on 1,000 grams of carbs, am I going to use junk food, or am I going to use just decent foods? Well, I might use a mixture depending on what digests good, but yeah, I tend to agree. Like you're going to run into inflammation and gut inflammation, especially with just overconsumption of those foods. And somebody's going to be like, oh, well, I loaded for my last show on, I junk loaded and ate, burgers and fries and whatever, which that I'm not saying that it doesn't work, because it does. And I've used those things with people. I have people that have metabolisms that have to have those calorically dense foods. But as a whole, I totally agree.
And you know what? Like, I just have a really good idea for one of our next podcasts, so like that's even better. But that even to not go in super hard into the science, because I know you would have done it if we had the time for it. But it's one of those, when you are, depending upon how you dieted down, depending upon how your peak week looks, is that things like SIBO or whatever will not occur that quickly over the loading. Like if anything, it's just like throwing friggin' throwing kindling onto an already raging fire, not throwing logs onto a fire that's already put out. So loading and stuff absolutely. But I love that you added that in there, because it's got really, we'll say, nothing to do with the exact question, but everything to do with what we're talking about for sure, in terms of like sugar versus non-sugar for sure. I'm really glad you put that in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
Beautiful.
Cool, man. All right. I think we covered everything.
Awesome. No, I thought those were friggin' great today. I love those. We'll have to toss this one up here right away. Yeah, obviously, ladies and gents, too, if you wanted an add-on to this, you put this out, go, hey, that was my question. You listen to it, or even if it wasn't, and you say, okay, cool. Can you explain a little bit more of that? Like, we love feedback. We love it if you come back and say, hey, I've heard otherwise, or whatever. Give it to us. We would love to chat with you guys more about not only what would you want to hear on the podcast, but obviously the Q&A stuff is the best way you guys can learn specific things for yourselves. So hopefully keep trying. If you haven't made one on yet, we will sneak it on for you.
All right. Cool beans.
All right. From Marty in Austin here at the Mind Body Broadcast. We'll catch you next time.